There you go. And I'm going to start this. So I just have just turn it on. Turn it off. Those are but I made okay, and you'll talk. Yeah, you guys can move the microphones too, I think, don't you? Like Aaron? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they're totally adjustable. And you have to click right. Okay. Right. I think so. Are you recording? Yes, we're recording.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here in Lynnwood. Someone applauded. I like that. Okay. I really appreciate you being here. I'm Sarah Olson, the Deputy Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Department Director, and enthusiastic about this morning's presentation. I'd like to make a couple of acknowledgments to begin. We do have Council Member Julia Altamirano Crosby here. Thank you. And our Assistant City Administrator, Art Samiza, is here. And our Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Director, Lynn Sordell, is here. And I'm excited to introduce you to the team of expert panelists from across the nation who are here with the Urban Land Institute for our 10-minute walk study, also supported by the Trust for Public Land and the National Recreation and Parks Association. And from here on out, I'm going to hand it over to the chair of the study panel, which is Aletha Dunstan.
Okay. Hi, good morning. Thomas Stallion. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this morning and for inviting us to the beautiful community of Lynnwood. As she mentioned, I'm Aletha Dunstan. I serve as the Executive Director of the Port Harrison Reuse Authority in Indianapolis, Indiana, and was honored to be chosen to serve as the chair of today's study visit panel. If you're not familiar with the Urban Land Institute, or ULI, it's a membership organization with about 46,000 members globally around the world, with a mix of multidisciplinary folks in the development industry. So everything from architects to city planners, engineers, finance sector, and public sector workers. We're going to get a little deeper into the actual presentation in a minute, but for now I want to turn it over to my colleague Rachel to talk a little bit about why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Banner, and I'm with the National Recreation and Park Association. We've actually been working with the City of Lynnwood for the past year on the 10-minute walk. It's a national campaign to improve access to safe and quality parks within a 10-minute walk home, and really supports mayoral engagement. So your mayor, Nicola Smith, has signed on to the campaign and endorsed this bold vision that everyone has access to a park within a 10-minute walk of home. The 10-minute walk campaign is a movement led by the Trust for Public Land and supported by the Urban Land Institute and ourselves, the National Recreation and Park Association. So I want to thank again the mayor and the park staff who have been working this last year to create citywide plans that prioritize access to parks and green space. and for the opportunity to dive more deep into a particular neighborhood, looking at a smaller scale park access. Why the 10-minute walk and why parks? Parks are really the center of communities and bring so many benefits to the places that we live, work, and play. They are vital institutions for community connection, health, equity and inclusion, environmental sustainability, and I think particularly important to today's conversation, equitable economic development. So we'll hear today some of the reasons why we think parks are extremely important to this particular area of Lynnwood, but keep in mind sort of the three main benefits I think that we've seen. Again, economic development, connectivity, really helping to create a cohesive environment for people to live, and then thinking about how we are inclusive of all community members and create some shared economic opportunities within Lynnwood.
Okay, so we'll introduce the rest of the panel. We have Rachel Banner, the Director of Park Access with the National Recreation and Park Association, who just met. Dan Ernestine, the Economic Development Director with the City of Everett, Washington. Aaron Ishizaki, a partner with Methuen, nearby here in Seattle, Washington. Ellen Martin, Principal with the Economic and Planning Systems in Sacramento, California. Jean Meyerson, Principal with the Belgrade Group in San Francisco. Steve Falkenbush, Partner with Q2 Real Estate out of Northbrook, Illinois. And Jeff Stewart, Executive Director of the Johnson County Park and Recreation Department in Johnson County, Kansas. So as you can see, we are from a mix of areas around the country. I want to remind you all that we're here as volunteers to not only give back, but also learn about your community and from each other. And we were all very excited to have our time here in Lynnwood and to be here with you today. So the National Study Visit process is a standardized process that's followed around the country. So ahead of time, we're given some extensive briefing materials put together in a book by local staff and stakeholders. We take a tour of the study area on our arrival on bus and by foot. And I think we interviewed close to about 30 folks, some of which I see in the room today. That's a mix of local stakeholders, residents, business owners, and city staff. From that, we kind of lock ourselves in a hotel room, conference room for a day, and develop some actionable recommendations and some thoughts that we will share with you this morning in this public presentation. So the presentation does have the accompanying PowerPoint, and then a written report will be issued to the city in a few months. That'll go into a little bit greater detail than what you hear here today. Okay, so our study area that we were asked to look into was the city center area and all of the surrounding uses. So I think we all know this area has a lot going for it, but we also know people have been hearing about this area for a while. So some of the major assets, like the library, convention center, city hall, and the interurban trail, as well as some of the anticipated projects like the large transit center, Northland Village, and the Connect projects. We, at any study, are given a list of very specific questions. We do our best to answer those, but then we can't help ourselves, we answer other questions as well. So a quick summary. So everything really is focused around the 10-minute walk and the importance of parks, but more specifically, we were asked to drill down into what role an urban park could play to catalyze development and civic activity in and around the study area. What tools and partnership opportunities are available to utilize the city center to incentivize private development? Is there a way for the city to assist developers with the consolidation of small parcels? And what streetscape interventions can help transform city center into a more pedestrian-oriented and connected development, as we all know the transit is coming. So in addition to these questions, like I said, we've made other observations that we'll summarize from the perspective as visitors and outsiders, and then also from the lens of our own professional backgrounds. Okay, so what we heard from you and our interviews and our Uber drivers. So Lynnwood, we know it's known for shopping, we know it's great for families, has good schools and a great police department. I might be misquoting someone that about 17 parks within 7 square miles. It's relatively affordable, has a very diverse population with all the unique cultures and identities that brings along with that. So overall, a very welcoming community. But we also heard that it's fairly auto-centric and unsafe for pedestrians, especially those in wheelchairs and with disabilities. That it has a lot of dated strip malls, a lot of scattered site furniture stores. There's little to no public awareness of the city's ongoing plans, especially for the area, and some skepticism that the city center will get started and or done, right? And overall, we heard that there was a bit of a lack of unified identity. So to that point, we were visiting your Facebook page, and this week you actually had an article posted from king5.com about how the transit hub might cure Lynnwood's quote-unquote identity crisis. So to our surprise, when we watched that video, we learned about your identity. Traditionally, with blue eyeshadow and fall hair, which is funny. But, so the point of this is that you already have a brand, right? Everyone does. It's sometimes your brand is people don't know anything about you. Sometimes it's they only know the worst thing about you. But it's really how do other people describe you when they talk about you or your community, and what do they think of first? So what we saw, again, as visitors, our takeaway, and again, a lot of us are not from the Pacific Northwest, so this might not be as unique to you here as it was to us. But we were really impressed by this setting and this campus. You know, this was the area of town that really gave us a feeling that we felt like we were in a special place. It looked like there was some of that with that Seymour Community Health Center setting as well. We really appreciated that. And then we heard a lot about the amphitheater, didn't get to visit, but we can kind of tell that also gets that same feeling. But most importantly, your identity and your brand, they can't come from a consultant or a marketing team or outsiders like us. They're built on kind of shared experiences and a commitment to all the small individual decisions you make on a day-to-day basis, and your commitment to just building on what makes you kind of the best and most unique place you can be. So regarding City Center, after 20 years, we know that the brand has become a bit stale, and it might be time to have a little bit of a refresh. This does not mean at all that we think you should get back in our room and start replanning the area. We think you've kind of planned it to death at this point. It really is time for action, and we hope that we leave you here with a few tips and recommendations on how to get started. But we do think you might want to reimagine who the users and the uses of the space might be. We know that it's transitioned from maybe originally anticipating being more office use, and now the market is dictating that there's more of a residential slant to that. So just make sure your parks and your classes reflect any of the anticipated users and uses that are coming. And we can talk about it later, but we also think you might want to give this area its own unique brand. I know City Center is the land use category, but it doesn't have to be kind of what you call the area or how you refer to the area, especially if it comes with 15 or 20 years of not baggage necessarily, but a little bit of a history. So just a few quick images of places that have celebrated their culture through different design or programming. See here directly on the base of the building. Again, this is Detroit. I don't know what your Detroit is reflecting, but you can get the idea of the kind of feeling they're trying to set. Again, another cultural celebration. This is Blue Ash Summit Park out of Cincinnati. So I heard a lot during my interviews in particular about the rain here and wanting covered spaces. They did something fun with colored plexiglass where the sun comes through from different angles throughout the day, and kind of the shapes on the ground move and the kids play and enjoy it. But they also do ice skating under this in the winter, and then during the summer it has couches and fire pits. And you know, this is a much larger park, but you can kind of start to see how this could be replicated on a smaller scale. So we all hear about social media and Instagrammable moments. We thought this was just a really good, easy, indicative way to let your residents help tell your story for you. So any small opportunities for art or public engagement. And again, a rebranding of City Center to something that is a little more shareable could be very helpful. But in general, just make sure that you know who you are and what you want to be, and you are the only ones that can decide how you get there. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues now to to discuss our other takeaways, but in general, we've kind of divided those into 3 or 4 categories of leadership for change, physical design, transportation improvements, and attracting private investment. So I'm gonna pass it on and get started with Jean.
Great, thank you, Althea. I'm gonna take some of the concepts that Althea started with and direct them. There we go. I've mastered quicker. You're fortunate because you're faced with several large opportunities and decisions, but not every community has the type of opportunity that is facing you. And we see the challenge for you to direct change. And that's going to be critical in the success of your outcomes. So the manner in which you direct the change will have long-lasting manifestations, and it's going to determine the degree to which the city center is a success or less than it could be. One of my colleagues came up with this quote. Well, I'm going to quote a colleague who said, "The light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming right at you." So it's critical that you define and guide the decisions inherent in the new train station and where it will meet the public. People, what, 18,000 people are going to get off the train, and what are they going to see? See cars. You want them to get off and feel welcome. You want them to feel that Lynnwood is a special place. You want them to get off and see some greenery, have very clear and effective wayfinding, multilingual, because you live in a very diverse area. So how the new station connects with the sidewalk that is Lynnwood is going to be really critical to your success. I want to emphasize that the quality of public realms throughout, what I call the connective tissue between different places and open spaces, is also critical. How well you plan that will determine the success of your city center area. And the key is to control the future of your streets. You have a lot of traffic, some very major traffic improvements coming. You want to direct those to work for you, Lynnwood, for you to have a successful pedestrian, bike, multimodal area that's safe, attractive, and draws people in. You don't want people to say, "Oh, I don't want to go there because I can't cross the street." So you've got to figure out how to control your intersections and the traffic that's coming. Don't let it happen to you. You want to be forcing decisions on what happens and how it's designed. You have a great opportunity to shape your city, and not every city has such a grand opportunity. So the theme of my talk is guiding change and directing it. So you need to take control. You have the opportunity to solidify your town center plan vision. Althea talked about the vision. Again, don't scrap and start over, but update it and refine it and move forward and do it quickly. You want people to understand the outcomes that are desired. That's going to be easy for people to read, and you'll get better working relationships with your developers, and you'll get better buy-in from your community if people understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to mention a couple of specifics. We recommend that you update the public realm guidelines and articulate your vision for what you want the streetscape to feel like and look like. You want to build some flexibility into those guidelines so that you can address changes and opportunities as they come up. You want to incorporate and integrate the best of what you've learned from the Northline Village planning process. Going forward, again, you want to allow for some creative flexibility. I understand that they took some internal roadways and created jogs so that you didn't just have a grid pattern. And that's simple, but some communities don't know how to be flexible to that extent. It sounds like Lynnwood does know how to, so I encourage you to build on those strengths of yours. We recommend that you emphasize value enhancement and qualitative aspects of open space, which is key to your future value creation and to the success of the city center. Further to the process, we understand that there have been recent changes within the city in simplifying the process, and we encourage you to continue in that direction, because for a developer to come in, they're going to look at you and Federal Way and all the other areas that are experiencing transit expansion. They're going to say, where do I understand what I can do? Where can I get something done? Is there an understandable and predictable process? Because developers, love them or hate them, they live in a world of risk, and wherever they can minimize the risk, their cost of building whatever they're going to build is going to be the same here as in Federal Way or wherever. But if there's a welcoming community, and I'm not saying you have to roll over and play dead, but if there's a community where they understand how to get things done, they're going to want to work with you and not the other person, the other community. So you want to eliminate confusion. A way to guide change is to embrace the wider community and make city center a place for all. I'll come back to that. This slide mentions some physical opportunities, and my colleagues will discuss those in a minute. So how do you guide change? You need to build support so that city leadership has the ability and the support to move the city center development to center stage and to find the funding to make the improvements that are necessary. So we heard that Althea mentioned there's some skepticism about the plan. It's been around for a while. So make something happen now and make something tangible happen now so people understand that this is real, it's going to happen. Get people involved. You have a lot of constituencies. So you have the ability to build broad-based support in your community to move forward with your plans. Engage a lot of residents, transit riders, existing business community, the developers to support tough decisions that are needed to prioritize capital spending. Your community is a diverse, vibrant community. Your website was, we were impressed that it's you're not only English, Spanish, you've got Arabic, Mandarin, Korean. I mean, so you recognize the vitality of your community, harness that, and by doing so, you'll have a more vibrant city center. So how do you achieve support? Bring everybody in your community into the process, build support, you'll have buy-in, and buy-in will result in stewardship going forward for whatever it is you're building, particularly the parks and the public realm. You want to have this be a place where everybody's a part of the success. Everybody owns your parks and your streetscapes, and they're really proud of them. We have a few ideas on how you can do this. Form a community advisory board. I think you have a parks advisory board. Maybe that's a subset or expansion of it. You have several models, with that, and your police advisory panel. You know best. I don't know what the structures you have in the city, but engage a broad section of your community to support this. You perhaps to widen your diversity on the representation. You could offer to pay people to participate, to recognize the time that they are contributing. But tap a variety of residents. Your advisory group can also help you define powerful and valuable programming ideas. We heard that the community college is interested in space and being involved in the parks programming. So you've got the opportunity for some public-private partnerships. Take advantage of these. We heard that there's an interest in after-school programming for kids. Perhaps the Parks Department, if you haven't already, can work with the Volunteers of America, Boys and Girls Clubs that have some great programs elsewhere in the city. And as you develop your programming downtown or the city center rather, you can engage them in some new programs. And finally, we think that there's the opportunity for you to explore grant and philanthropic funding opportunities. You can engage the community as well, crowdsourcing. People love to name benches, get kids involved in designing tiles, putting their names on them, and doing a community collaborative process. I mean, those are the little things, but begin to build a foundation of support on lots of different levels. Now for some more physical stuff, I'll hand this over to Erin. Here we go.
Jean, for kind of talking us through the how to really be proactive and guiding this change with the pretty amazing regional investment that's coming to the city in 4 years. It's sort of unbelievable to imagine 18,000 people every day, right, coming to this new transit station, light rail, as well as a really robust bus station as well. And as Jean said, how can we be proactive about really creating a wonderful arrival experience and welcome for folks. I'm going to walk through a little bit of thoughts from the panel on how, when we talk about refreshing the city center plan, what we think of, again, is not a 2-year planning process, but looking at how you might think about prioritizing investments and kind of how to get started. So from our team, what we heard through conversation was a lot of discussion about how people will be getting to the transit station and how to make it easily accessible by bus. So we really encourage you to think about coordinating with those agencies, as well as things like on-demand transportation. Shuttles might be a really great way to help people get to and fro. Sound Transit has a program called VIA, which is an app that they've been looking at that might be something interesting for Lynnwood as well. Above all, you know, as you can see, obviously with the park and ride in the transit center right now, there is a lot of parking. And so as much as possible, if you can really try to focus on bike and pedestrian safety and having a comfortable and inviting experience for people who are getting off those buses and getting off the train, that's going to be really critical. And as Jean mentioned, you know, this really is about the center of the city. It's a regional investment, and it'll be a big amount of growth that we anticipate. And so with all of that growth, which is so exciting, we want it to benefit the whole community. We know the community college, there'll probably be a lot of transit riders coming and going with community college. As well, with this anticipated growth, which is such an exciting opportunity, you can also anticipate more demand for the pool and the rec center, more demand for other green spaces and city services. And so that's something just to think about and to plan for, so that this new growth is supported in a way that makes it really a great place for everyone. So key to all of that really is, again, the parks and open space and public realm as a really important piece to make this be successful growth that's adding to quality of life for everyone. So as our panel looked at the city center plan and the context and thinking about the area, what we tried to do again is think about how might you prioritize sort of some key investments and framework. We were really struck by a few sort of 3 key assets or destinations in the area. Let me see if this works. Okay, so the first one being the transit center itself. Certainly the rec center, the library up where we are right now, and then the convention center is another spot that, you know, you have a lot of people coming and going. There's, you know, certainly the Olympus Spa and shopping over there as well, but those seem to be 3 sort of anchors and natural destinations. As we look at those, then we start to think about what are ways to prioritize street or pedestrian improvements to really begin to connect those. So in thinking about our 10-minute walk for parks, and just as a reference, it's about a 10-minute walk from the station up to 196, another 10 minutes from there up to where we are here, 10 and 10 minutes over. So each of those kind of legs is about a 10-minute walk. So what we wanted to do is say, let's try to really, again, prioritize that sort of triangle. So we see 44th and 196 as being really important to kind of focus pedestrian and bike improvements on. We think the trail will probably become a really important way for people to get to the station, especially along this edge here. So that's another key piece. And then we really applaud all of your efforts and discussion in the plans to date to think about creating some smaller scale streets and ways to kind of break up the pretty large blocks that are out there today. So these sort of mid-block connections, whether they are for cars or they could even just be for pedestrians and by foot, this kind of shared street, those we think are a really important piece as well. So with this drawing, we tried to kind of put together all the things that we've heard of that are in the works, all in one place, and encourage you to think about it holistically. So you can start to see how the proposed shared street through Northline Village fits in, how this sort of shared street could connect across and over, and how all of these pieces come together. With respect to parks, we'll get into it here in just a minute. We think, again, with thinking about the 10-minute walks, you want to be sort of strategic about having a variety of different open spaces and maybe having those each serve different purposes or a variety of purposes and populations. So we'll get to that in just a minute. We also think there's a really great opportunity for some kind of shared civic place where there's multiple different uses coming together that can really activate open space. A lot of good opportunity for partnership with that. So this is kind of the overall framework that we talked about, and Steve will explain a little bit more about the details of how we see these opportunities.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to talk a little bit about some details, just for a few minutes. So you'll see some. Does it press the middle?
Yeah.
So there's a star, right? Look for the stars. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So the first point we want to make is that as we talk to people about from City Center, the developers and others who are building projects within that area, how are you going to get to the train? Well, they said, well, there's an existing pedestrian bridge, right? Right there. You've already got that. You have this trail, and it may need to be paid attention to. It may need to become something where there are separations from bikes and pedestrians. It may need to take on a little more urban look. It may need to have potentially some sound barriers, because we were over there, it's a little noisy. The landscaping and other things might help you do that. It may need to be lit. People come on and off the train at different hours, and through that segment, and the reason we're picking on that particular segment is that if you look at where the tail goes on the train line for the crossing, it's unlikely that in future rail expansion will pick on this particular segment of the trail, whatever they decide to do in the future. So I think investments in this particular segment are not like at risk for the future. And that's it. So that's the existing trail, which we think you should pay some attention to, because we think it's going to get a lot of use and we think it holds great opportunity. It also has a little bit of billboard opportunity on the freeway, because if you can see the fences that you decorated from the freeway. We noticed it several times. So next, we're going to talk about these stars. There's 3 intersections that we think are pretty important. We're not picking on anybody, right? I'm not a traffic engineer. I develop real estate. But become design advocates for yourselves with the state. I work with Illinois Department of Transportation on my projects. I know it's a lot of brain damage. And I don't mean to pick on Washington, but as you start to think about these roads, you can look around the country and see some great examples of where they de-emphasized the car getting through the intersection and emphasized people getting through the intersection. There's a concept called table, where the actual intersection rises up so pedestrians don't go over a curb. They get to walk, the texture of the pavement changes, the color of the pavement changes. And it's a notice to cars, hey, you're in my zone, not your zone. So I'm picking on some examples, but the next one is, what is right-of-way? Right-of-way is just real estate you decided to allocate to different people and uses. So do you need all those lanes just because they're going to be busy at 8 a.m. or at 5 a.m.? Some places have said traffic calming works with reversible lanes. You see the lights up here? You can tell somebody from in the morning AM rush, this is the directionality to the train station. These are your lanes. And that way, maybe you don't need quite as wide of a street, but you could take those lanes and give them back to people on foot. So that's these are just some ideas. We had a whole 48 hours to think about this. So you guys can dive much deeper, and I'm sure you'll find a lot of great ideas in the country and around the world. So the next idea is back to the same concept of what is real estate in terms of the right-of-way and how you distribute it to different people. Now, medians are beautiful, and you've got a median shown in your plan for 196th Street. And I understand that might be shadowing left turn lanes and whatnot. But at the same time, can you take that 18 feet and use it for bicycles on the edge? Can you take that 18 feet and through the urban core, again, I got to start think about that street and how you distribute that real estate that's the right of way to make a difference, not necessarily for the people traveling through your town, but the people living in your town. So the last piece is these connectivity streets, right? That we've been talking about here. You really, somebody worked real hard with the project over here. If you look at the drawings, you've got pretty wide streets. So as you build these new connections, make them pedestrian-oriented streets. Be creative with your design. You can see that in a small right-of-way, you can really make the car still get through. But maybe what it does is it has to turn some corners or slow down. And then also, maybe the street's a chameleon. And sometimes there's a car on it, and sometimes it's gone, and you're having a street fest. So those are kind of the ideas that we picked on in 48 hours to sort of make use, to say to the community, be your own design advocate when it comes to thinking about these infrastructure improvements. And Jeff is going to take you home with something about places.
Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to congratulate you for the opportunities that you have in front of you today. Truly, you're very, very fortunate, and I want to applaud you for making the efforts and to care enough to try to shape your community with these opportunities in front of you. What you are doing today and some of the focus you have in providing gathering spaces and parks will not only shape your community, but it'll create spaces that will create memories and things that people will talk about for decades and from one generation to the next. So congratulations, and I applaud you to begin with on all of your efforts and caring enough to make this happen for your community. So I get to do the fun stuff. I get to hone in a little bit on parks and some gathering space. And so it's been a blast over the last couple of days to focus on your community and specifically the city center to take a look at this. And I think you've got some great opportunities ahead of you to create that sense of space. As Steve pointed out and Aaron pointed out, we paid particular attention to bicycle and pedestrian friendly routes to getting places to those destinations that they may desire. But I think along those routes you can create some spaces that folks can enjoy and gather in. And I want to particularly point out some of an area where the star is that your own city plan has identified as potential park location. And considering the routes and some of the pedestrian friendly improvements that our sketch identifies, we think this would be an appropriate site for one of these parcels here, maybe more than one of the parcels, to generate a small 1 or 2 acre park where you can include some areas for folks to gather, to relax outdoors, to have some night green space, and perhaps even a couple of small park amenities. It's really kind of right there in the middle of the planning area, and I think people will gravitate towards that, and it will complement some of the activities, whether it be businesses, could be restaurants, and other things that are happening in that area. But with some of the routing here, we also think there's an opportunity for you to really take another look and have some serious conversations about some additional gathering space that we call our civic center area here. And Aaron highlighted it a little bit to pointed out over here to the very right side of the sketch here. The civic center being right here. If you consider bringing some civic type activities or services in this area, I think you can also create some wonderful gathering places or park-like settings. It'll complement the businesses that are there, the convention center that is there as well, and really be a true destination that folks will enjoy both day and at night if it's properly done. So I might dive into that a little bit, what that might look like. And all the conversations that I participated in with your community, I couldn't help but think of an example that's happening in my community where I live in Johnson County. This is one of our cities that took a leap of faith, if you will, and decided to move their city hall, which is not an easy thing to do. But they decided to do it after years of planning and developing partnerships. And so you see that on that top picture there is their new city hall. And you'll notice it says Park University on it. It says Public Market on it. But it's also the city hall. The city hall actually occupies the second floor in this building. And through partnerships on the top floor, it leases space to one of the local universities that was interested in holding classes in this new development area. And it's been very, very successful. On the lower floor, it's really a public market space where there's a number of vendors, restaurants, arts and crafts type activities that take place. Just has been a very, very busy and popular place, a gathering point, pulling from residential properties as well as from the businesses in the area, and has created quite a lot of energy and excitement here as well. If you look on the second picture in the middle there, that's a picture of the backside of City Hall there. So the public market spills out into this commons area or this plaza here where you can see the fire pits and places to sit and enjoy a craft beer or a glass of wine or a meal. But what's to that excitement building that is there on the backside is a public library that we just opened up as well. And so, and it's doing extremely well. It's been a very popular location for folks that are looking for library services and just places to hang out as well. And then the bottom picture there is the street view of the City Hall, and you can see they're really standing on the new community center site, taking a picture in that direction. So there's a plaza area or kind of a park-like setting between the recreation center and City Hall there. You can't really see it from the picture, but there's a small amphitheater type space where live music can be played, food trucks can come in. We have a farmer's market as well. There's a garage that you can just barely see a little bit of it there in the picture, but it was designed in a way where those food trucks or those farmer market vehicles could be on the bottom floor or the ground level of the garage inside and kind of spill out onto the plaza area with the items that they're selling. So it's a great place, a lot of energy there, brings a lot of folks from the community, really from miles around to enjoy. So it's been very successful. A lot of development continues to happen. In fact, just right across the street, we partnered with the Shawnee Mission School District, who developed a $28 million aquatic stadium. They're actually in the median, and it's a beautiful facility that adds more attraction to it, and we operate it and maintain it for them to really offer this service to the entire community beyond the school district, and has become already a national attraction. So those kinds of things continue to happen there. And then one of the things that we heard a lot as well is we need a central park. And there were a lot of amenities, lots of ideas that were shared with us. You can imagine the long list of them. And to try and do that on a 1 or perhaps even a 2-acre site is not realistic. And while we think it's very important that you do provide those spaces in your city center, we took a bird's eye view here on Google Earth to look at the entire area. And I think it's very telling. You can see the city center area is really a sea of concrete there. So there's a lot of asphalt, not a lot of tree canopy. But where you do see the tree canopy is where we're sitting today. And it is a beautiful setting. And when our team first arrived here, you could just tell how much everyone enjoyed coming into this space. Perhaps it's worth consideration in looking at moving some of your civic buildings to the city center site, whether that be the city hall, the library, or both. We think your recreation center is a beautiful recreation center that perhaps should stay on this site, and we'll just complement additional park amenities that you might add to this. And with some of the pedestrian-friendly routes that we've shown in the graphic, I think this will be a natural draw and attraction for folks that live in and work and play in the city center area to come to this, pulled away from the station, pulled away from the noise from the highway, and will really enjoy this and creating memories for years to come. So that was some of our thought there that you should consider as you plan your space for many years to come. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan, who will start some of the discussion on how you're going to take a look at starting to pay for some of this stuff.
That's right. Let's, if it can all happen. Am I on here? Yes, I am. Thank you. So the best metaphor I can use is that of a surfer. The city is not acting like the wave. The city is acting like the surfer on the board that's just trying to take advantage of the wave that's coming. And we talked about a train before, but I like the idea of the wave and just really being artfully and athletically moving down that wave in a way that moves that board in a direction that you really want to go. And of course, the power of the wave is both the investment that the public is making in sound transit, but also the private investment that's coming along with that, looking for places that investors can make a profit, but also that population can be dwelling. Because we all know growth is happening, we all know it's It's coming, so how do we maneuver that board? So in reality, when you created this city center plan, and I remember that since I'm a local, a lot of it was focused on office. And it was thought that the residents of the city center were really like 8 to 5 workers. And so that comes with a certain palette of amenities that you want to provide for those. But the market has shifted and population now is the big story. And we all know that we're adding 1 million people by 2050 in this area. Where are they going to go? Where are they going to live? How can we provide the density that is necessary while honoring the Growth Management Act? And so likely, and I say apartment dwellers, small unit dweller, multifamily dwellers, that's where the investment is happening. And so in order to ride this wave, you have to really think, what kind of amenities are these residents looking for? And I think this is a key question. And so you got to think, who are they? Well, they're people who love or need to get around without a car. And, I've kind of done check marks over here and, in city center, will they have transit nearby? Check. No problem on that one. We've got a big check there. Uber and Lyft pickups, we proved that you have those. That's good. Is it safe to ride bike or scooter on the street? Well, not so much. Pedestrian friendly, not so much. Even, I say even pedestrian non-threatening. Can you get to that level? Well, I don't even know if you're there yet, let alone pedestrian friendly. Who are they? Well, they're engaged with their immediate neighborhood. These are people that are attracted specifically to public spaces like plazas, parks, those restaurants that spill out on the sidewalks. They love doing co-working, as you can see from this photo. They love hangouts, whether it be coffee in the morning or a bottle shop in the evening. They like convenience shopping. They're looking for opportunities, frankly, to get engaged with the immediate neighborhood. And this presents a wonderful opportunity. These are your future residents. These are future leaders of the city of Lynnwood. Who are they? They're diverse. And they're valuing authenticity and balance in their life. So they're looking for local businesses that deliver their business with passion and skill. And you definitely have some of those, but they really love those. They're not so much, certainly they'll shop at chains, certainly they shop Amazon, but they love the coffee shop, the one-off that is really amazing, that has the amazing baked goods, right? Don't we all? They're looking for, like I said, hangouts, local entertainment, dining adventures, food trucks, places to stay fit. And frankly, not just the traditional athletic club type places, but unusual places, cross-training, places to indoor, outdoor that they can, and we have a wonderful climate to provide these things. And guess what? 1 out of 3 of them are dogs. Most apartment dwellers, I should say most apartment owners are finding that about 40 to 50% of their residents have a dog. So let's just say that you get 3,000 units in the city center, which I don't think is even, I think that's quite conservative. 1,200 dogs. Where are they going to poop? Where are they going to walk? Where are they going to run off leash? 1,200 dogs in this, place where you're surrounding them by cars and buses. You better look at, like these people said, the interurban trail and improve that and get that going. You better look at places. If nothing else, for this guy. So you should be asking, what will make these residents, and this is another way to look at it. Now we're looking at it from the private investor side for it. What will make my residents move in more quickly, move out more slowly? What will make them value their home more and share what they like about city center? Because believe me, they will share it. And they will be your best or your worst advocates if you do it right. And just to illustrate how important this is, if we can just increase rents or make expenses fall by reducing vacancy, that translates to $25 a month for a 150 unit apartment building. There's a miracle called cap rates in the real estate market. That adds $1 million of value to a project. So sure, will you get multifamily if you do nothing with City Center? Yes, probably so. Will investors flock there? No, they will not. The smart ones, the best ones, the ones you really want to attract are going to be looking for these amenities, these pallet amenities that their residents will pay more for. And you know what? Here's a list of the other light rail stations that will be opening in 2023 and 2024. And I don't know if I hit them all, but you're in competition with them. Because the investors are really, they're not tied to one of these. They will put their money in the bank that provides the most interest to them. And if it's desirable amenities at City Center, investors will flock to it. Without them, investors will go where costs are similar, but rewards are great. Alan's going to continue to expand on this.
All right, thank you so much, Dan. Good morning, everybody. So Dan talked a lot about some of the kind of quality of life and quality of place amenities that are important for attracting developer interest. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the flip side of that coin, which is what are some of the specific ways in which the city can seek to reduce developer cost, risk, and uncertainty. So the number one thing is those process improvements that Jean touched on earlier. So we understand that the city has made great strides in the last year or so in terms of improving your development entitlement processes. And we recommend that you continue to focus on that. Essentially, developers need to know what the rules of the game are, and they need the city to stick to it so that they have certainty with regard to their entitlement actions. Relatedly, and building on what Jean and Aaron had to say, we need to solidify the vision for the city center site and solidify some of those planning fundamentals in order to improve developer certainty. And so this has to do with, the shift in focus to housing. So we're updating the plans to reflect the concentration on housing. It also includes things like identifying infrastructure upgrades, public land dedications, the location of the park, any public land easements that might be required that will really improve developer certainty as they're looking at developer prospects and conducting their due diligence. Within all this context, you also need to make sure that you're maintaining flexibility. So this is a really challenging and important balance for a city to strike, is providing the certainty in terms of your entitlement timeframes and your entitlement requirements and what's going where, but also maintaining that flexibility to respond to changes in market conditions and consumer preferences. That's really critical for viable development opportunities to be able to respond to those changing conditions as circumstances change. So fourth, we have supporting the transition of uses. And this is really sort of a two-pronged approach. So we know that there are a number of existing uses out in the city center site that are much more auto-oriented and that perhaps are unlikely to thrive as city center transforms into a much denser and more, hopefully more pedestrian and bicycle-oriented neighborhood. So the city should initiate a business relocation program that incentivizes and facilitates moving some of those more auto-centric businesses into areas of the city that are more suitable for those types of uses and where those uses can really thrive over the long term. The second item related to transitioning uses is what I like to call kind of the rational property owner inertia problem that you face. And that has to do with impediments that we see in any revitalizing area where you do have existing cash flowing businesses. So not only, in order to redevelop or reuse that site, not only do you have to overcome the inherent development risk that comes with putting your money on the line for any development project, but you have to overcome that existing cash flow. And in many cases, for a property owner or investor, it may just be more rational to continue to maintain that existing known sure thing in the form of the cash flow in the business that's currently operating on the site. So that's a hurdle that you have to overcome. And the city can put in place certain programs to help to assist with property owners and investors in terms of overcoming that hurdle. That can come in the form of just property owner education regarding development prospects. That can come in the form of technical assistance, helping to guide less sophisticated property owners through the land use and entitlement and architecture, engineering, and design process. It could come through capital infusion into projects. Basically, any way in which the city can help to lower the risk and lower the cost associated with the revitalization of these uses will help to support the transition of these uses to higher intensity uses that more reflect the vision of the Civic Center site. Next, we have facilitating land absorption through the potential of City Hall, library, and community college uses on the site. So this is a real opportunity for the city to participate in absorbing some of these uses by relocating and activating a large stretch of property within the Civic Center, within the city center property that can really help to send a signal to the private sector investor community that the city is here, the city is committed, and they have active and activated uses that are going into the city center project. There's a few ways that the city can do it. They could be a credit tenant for private sector development, or it could come in the form of a public-private development opportunity, whereby perhaps the city purchases the land and then works with the private sector development interest to develop that property with both, civic and private sector uses. Next, we have considering a strategic expansion of the MFTE program. We understand that most multifamily residential development in this area doesn't work, it doesn't pencil without the property tax abatement program. So the city should take a close look at that and consider whether or not a strategic expansion of that program may be appropriate at this time. And then finally, we have identifying and prioritizing capital improvements that are needed to support development. In this regard, I think we would really emphasize the need to invest in those public realm improvements that help to contribute to the quality of life, quality of place elements that Dan was talking about. And potentially sort of de-emphasizing some of the larger roadway improvements and focusing really on that public realm and pedestrian and bicycle access within City Center. So, related to those public realm improvements, it's our strong recommendation that the city really make a clear funding commitment to the park and establish clear plans and vision for parks and recreation within the city center site. This, of course, requires the identification of land acquisition, capital, and operations and maintenance funding sources. And really, the key challenge here has to do with timing. The city really needs to acquire the land for, be it a city center park, be it a city center civic center. The city needs to acquire this land quickly, both to provide certainty to the development community, but also to access land prices where they are now before they grow, before they increase even more in the future. So we've identified a few approaches in this regard. The first we've touched on already, which is the aggressive pursuit of grants and other outside funding sources, capital campaigns, crowdsourcing, naming rights, et cetera. And offline, we can certainly offer additional insight regarding grant funding opportunities that we think the city ought to be pursuing. Next is park impact fees. So the city does have a fairly robust park impact fee program that just by my very rough estimates might generate somewhere between $5 and $10 million just based on the development that you have in the pipeline now. However, the challenge associated with park impact fees is the timing of when the city receives the revenue. They come in on an irregular basis and they're lumpy and they come in along with development. And really what the city needs is an upfront funding source so that you can get these you can get the land acquired and potentially get some of these public realm improvements in so that you're really improving the development opportunity for the private sector. So that's where we turn to some of these other city funding sources. We identified real estate excise tax as a potential source. There's so this again is sort of another, it's related to property tax, to property transactions. So again, it can be fairly lumpy, it's somewhat irregular, but we understand that there's about $1 million per year available specifically for parks improvements and another $1 million available for other capital improvements. The city has an existing line of credit that is not yet programmed. And so this is another thing that could be tapped into in order to advance fund or acquire some of these public realm improvements. So that's currently about $5.1 million. The REIT has been identified as the payback source for that line of credit. And then finally, we have the Economic Development Infrastructure Fund. So the EDIF is a set aside of the construction sales tax on projects that are over $10 million. And this money is specifically earmarked for strategic investments in public realm improvements. But we understand that it's underutilized at this point. There's only been one project that's been funded through this funding source. So we think that City Center Park and recreation and other public realm improvements are just an obvious use for these EDIF funds. But we do understand that, especially now that we put $10 million up here on the public slide, that there will be a lot of competition and competing priorities for those funds. So we also think that there's a strategy here whereby the city can backfill those EDIF funds using park impact fee revenues as they come in. So essentially the EDIF becomes more of a revolving loan fund program whereby you can still use those development related revenues as they come back in to recapitalize the EDIF, thereby potentially ameliorating some of those issues related with competing infrastructure priorities. And then of course, it's obviously critical that as you're planning your public realm improvements, that you make sure you have high quality operations and maintenance, likely in the form of property taxes or other sub-area district funding like a business improvement area. So I just want to end here with some kind of key specific city action items related to improving the private, the attractiveness of the city center for private investment activity, with kind of the overarching goal of identifying these strategic investment and land acquisition and regulatory interventions that are designed to encourage and facilitate those private investors. So first and foremost, the city needs to purchase land for the city center park and potentially associated civic center land uses. And they need to be assertive in terms of determining where that park is going to be and how it will be programmed. This offers an opportunity to identify public-private partnership opportunities to maybe co-locate some of those civic uses with your park and private development opportunities as illustrated here. The city could consider issuance, once you've acquired the land, the city could consider issuance of a developer RFP to seek a development partner to do that work. You should also be working to establish partnerships with other public sector and institutional users like the community college, like CMAR Health. You have some really great potential institutional partners here that can really help to activate and anchor this site. It would be very important components of this more high intensity mixed use community. And then finally, to echo the point we made earlier, we really think you should focus on that business relocation program that targets those uses that will thrive in a more auto-oriented environment, so that again, you're improving the development opportunity here in City Center and improving the attractiveness of this investment opportunity for your local development community. So with that, I will turn things back over to Rachel. For some closing thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you to all of our panelists for sharing their insight and expertise with us. I have been working, like I said, with the city for the last year, and Sarah, every call I'm on is like, what do we do with Civic Center? How do we get this park funded? So I know the city has been thinking about this for quite a long time, is committed to this area and to this community. So hoping that these key takeaways will help you get to that next step and answer some of the questions that Sarah has been asking for quite some time now. First, taking no action is shaping your community. Developers are coming in, People are taking action in this area, and so it's your choice whether the city takes action or you let development happen. But we believe the city really needs and can lead the way. People want to see something happen and have a great opportunity to do so and to lead the change in an equitable manner in city center. As has been said, also people should drive the design process and not cars. So think about that person walking on that street. Think about somebody who may not have a car or access to a car and is commuting on these busy streets for their jobs, for their success in life. And how can you prioritize that person, that biker, and not let engineers get in the way of a traffic design for cars? How can you cultivate diversity and cultural authenticity in design, programming, engagement, and leadership? We heard you have a rich community here who is interested in celebrating their cultural diversity. Use that to your benefit. That is amazing. Not every community has that. And allow it to shape the design of this civic center, your programming engagement, and consider who those leaders are who are making improvements within the city center. And then again, to drive home that point, be strategically bold, do something substantial with city center and do it now. Now is your time before it's too late.
Okay, so with all of our takeaways and thoughts, and I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and thoughts, we just want to put a few things in the back of your mind, just so please don't forget. We've emphasized a lot here today about engaging your current residents from all backgrounds, ethnically, socioeconomic, you know, if they're from this country, if they've arrived, if they grew up here in Lynnwood or came from the outside. But also, it's also very important to find ways to engage those incoming residents. Because I think I heard from several of you in the interviews that this did start as somewhat of a bedroom community with a lot of people, you know, maybe sleeping here, but working and recreating other places. So you want to make sure that these approximately 2,000 folks that are going to be moving in a year from this point forward feel engaged and feel like they're part of Lynnwood, and not just their apartment community that they're a part of or city center, but really get engaged. So make sure they know when they arrive or work with the developers of each unit to have, you know, almost like a welcome wagon and onboard these new residents. You know, where do I vote? What social media accounts should I be following? What advisory boards are accepting members? How do I get engagement? But also, as we remember to do all of this work together through engagement, let's remember to celebrate our successes together, because that is the way that we grow as a community and get people coming back. I'm a city planner. I always joke that, you know, you have comprehensive plan meetings and you have somebody that says, oh, this is my 15th comprehensive plan meeting and I still never seen anything come out of these meetings. You have to be remembering to find ways to celebrate the small successes together. So if you do figure out your next step and what your next action is going to be, make sure that you're celebrating it far and wide so everybody can be a part of that excitement and start generating some energy. And finally, remember that parks and community development are true economic development. So we talked about a lot of small amenities, things like trails, parks, plazas, but there are things like internal dog washes in your apartment building and off-leash centers, you know, yoga on the lawn. These are not fun, nice amenities anymore. They're expected. Your competition is going to be providing those. So you not only have to think how do we provide what they're expecting, but how do we make it special and unique and authentic to this area so they choose Lynnwood and they stay in them. And generally, I really do believe that these are very wise investments and those are your form of incentives. So just keep that in mind. I know it's easy for our parks department to talk about how important parks are, but I know everybody else in the room after today really gets excited about City Center and sees the vision of what it can be. With that, I want to thank you all for your time and for inviting us here, and then we have some time for any questions or comments. Use the microphone.
Carson is a city administrator in the mayor's office. I have a lot of questions, but I'm just gonna make a few comments, and invite our council member to make any comments she might want to make, and then turn it over for questions. You have a great audience, we have a great staff here today, and folk from the community here that I want to get to their questions. But I just want to say, and Mayor Smith would be here, but she's at a transportation board meeting this morning to talk about some of the stuff that we talked about. But I really, and if she were here, she would probably want to say thank you for coming to Lynnwood. And I greatly enjoyed it. She would have really enjoyed to hear your comments. These were excellent comments and perspectives that you gave to us today. I was especially interested in the comment about the dog and poop factor. Having owned dog for many years, and we have 3 dogs, that's pretty significant. That's the kind of thing that I personally had not thought about, but that's significant. 1,200 dogs times 2 poops per day. That's a lot of stuff. But I just want to thank you, and I'll try to ask a question too if I can get in after everybody else asks their questions. But I really appreciate your perspective and the help it will give us and ideas it will give us, so we can make sure we make the right choices, which is not always easy to make the right choices. I should say Everett, I think my development knows what I'm talking about, not easy. But I just would like to, if I could, and I want to thank Lynn and Sarah too for being involved in this and helping us get through the process. Thank you very much, and your staff. But if I could, I'd like to invite one of our council members, Councilmember Juliet, brand new to our council, and see if you have any comments you want to make on behalf of the council to our panel.
Put me in hot spot.
I know she's got a few comments, but it could be.
Well, it's better if I speak in Spanish, right? When you're in difficulty time. No, I want really appreciate your time. I admire that you put all this together in 48 hours, something like that. That's amazing. I admire you are a great team. I'm new in the city council. I started January 6th was my first meeting. And yes, I belong to the diversity. And yes, I heard a lot about our community and the diversity community, but yet we want to start, we have the retreat with our city council members, and the unique idea that we have together is that, yes, we have to be focused on how to build the trust with our community, because you cannot engage anybody if you don't build the trust, right? So how we can ownership and honor our diversity communities that are here. There are already opportunities the community engage and for being part of the board, members, but we don't hear from anybody that, hey, I would like to be, so it's like, I try to do word of mouth, because in the Latino community, the word of mouth is faster than the internet, so so I try to use all that, but yes, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for every single one. It is a pleasure to be here, and in behalf of the rest of the city council members, I can say thank you so much, and I will pass all this message to them, and if we have different questions, we can reach us. I don't know. Thank you so much.
I'll make a quick comment on that. Is that I think one of the most effective ways of building trust with any group that doesn't feel represented is something physical and tangible that is built. I think a lot of times asking to be on a board is so abstract and people can't see the results of it. But if you can build something or a mural or something like that people can touch and feel and see and take pictures of, that's a wonderful way.
And I'd also just add to think about how the economic growth is inclusive of those communities. How can you build something like a land trust where several community members could come together and be able to benefit from that economic development? Or think about how business owners that are currently in that civic center space can come together again to pool their money or create economic activity of their own in this growth of city center.
Do you have any other questions or comments from the crowd? Did you bring anything laminated?
I didn't. Following with the Lynnwood Business Consortium and also Anna's Home Furnishings, thank you for having a picture of our. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank all of you guys for taking the time and meeting with all of us. And it was really refreshing and eye-opening at the same time to hear some of your ideas and inputs. And I'm really looking forward to hearing and working with the city and hearing about how they would like to engage with the businesses and our property owners here to make something special happen. So thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Corbett Locke. I'm city staff, and thank you very much for being here. This is amazing, and the insights and the fresh perspectives, very much appreciated. And I don't know if this is a question or a comment, so just bear with me, but I think this slide is really resonates with me, and I don't want to offend anyone, but Lynnwood downtown doesn't have a river, it doesn't have waterfront, it doesn't have some of the things that many other communities have as a geographic amenity. And the trail, I think, is our opportunity. You're talking about a 10-minute walk to a park. Well, the trail is a park, and the trail, you should be within 10 minutes of that. And if you are, then great things can happen. And I would encourage us to look at our trail with fresh eyes and give it enhancements. Some of this was mentioned because when I think of great downtowns and urban trails and whatnot, if I'm driving by in a car or a bus and I see it, I'm going to go there tomorrow and check it out. You know, I don't get that feeling here on this one. This one feels very industrial and not very friendly, and no offense, but you know, even here it's on the wrong side of the street for the city center itself. And anyway, so I would love to help with that, and I think that alone would do a lot towards what you're talking about.
So thanks for that. In our feeling and our belief set is that to be a design advocate helps you to think through that. But I really wanted to underline phase, whatever it is, when the railroad goes to the next step. To advocate for that line to be in the right place so it doesn't take your trail away, or it doesn't put your trail in the permanent shadow. And that, to me, we didn't get to spend a lot of time on that. But the next phase of the trail, which may not be in my lifetime, but will be coming, I advocate to the town to please get ahead of that curve. That's all I got.
Yeah, if you don't want Sound Transit to go somewhere, purchase a lot of park and walk it. Put that in your report.
This presentation is being recorded, so it is another one.
I'm glad you could ask a question. I appreciate the comments about how Lynnwood has to be remembered. We are in competition with potential investors and with other light rail locations in the area. So I'd be interested to hear some more of your thoughts around the idea of what are your impression about what do you see as some of the uniquenesses of Lynnwood? What's Lynnwood's competitive edge over in this competitive area?
I'll speak to that or try. I mean, and it's kind of mushy, which is kind of like my section, but your competitive edge is your people. And so how you want to define yourselves and how you can figure out very creatively to make yourselves look different than all the communities around you is your competitive edge. And that's what's going to define you. So if you look just like Mill Creek or anywhere else, so what? Think about, and what you have the ability to define in the city center is something that's gonna be here for a while. So try to get it right and give yourself some flexibility as your community changes to evolve some of the improvements or the park attributes that you have. But it's up to you, and as creative as you can be, you wanna communicate who you are, that you're a vital community. I put the peace pole in front of the, in my slide because you're very welcoming and you're very open. And I don't know if all the other communities out here are or aren't, but figure out who you are and make that the centerpiece. And that's how you differentiate yourself.
If I can just add to that a bit as well, I mean, I think for all of us coming from different places, we also recognize there's some great, amazing things already here in Lynnwood. The rec center, the pool is kind of unbelievable. I mean, it's so packed, I think, every weekend, and that's really wonderful. The spa is like a regional destination, to go to the spa. There's things, there's lots of great things that can build on. We talked about restaurants in the area, Kona Kitchen, some of the other restaurants. Like there is something different, I do think, about Lynnwood, and to tie that together with the people is really a great opportunity.
So normally my jobs are representing a lot of investors and developers in the area. So I spend most of my time to look at what's opportunities in downtown Seattle, downtown Bellevue, or some other suburban cities. But one unique thing about the city of Lynnwood, I think, is the zoning, but also there's some points that's going to limit the city of Lynnwood. So in other locations that you were mentioning about the light rail stations, the only place compared to others, those are transit stations that downtown Lynnwood's zoning allow up to 350 feet. Does the height allow for high rise? So the other locations doesn't have. But one thing, or a few things that I think has slowed down the developers wanted to go into put high rise in downtown Lynnwood is the parking ratio. So parking ratio is one thing that's going to either impact the cost for high-rise development, because I think we have a limit of lands in downtown Lynnwood for parks, and if you put a bunch of mid-rise here, that's going to take off most of your lands here, and also why developers pay like 10 or 15 times more in downtown Bellevue or downtown Seattle for a high rise that we pretty much zoned for to go up the same height. But because of the parking ratio and the floor area ratio, the limits for high rise here. So I think that's what the city council should look at it, how we can use our land here to attract more jobs or the tech sectors and companies wanted to move in here, and then how these companies wanted to work with the developers. I think that's one thing unique here is how we can help these companies truly look into this, the city center of Lynnwood. So that's one comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Karen Fitzgerman. I am a city staff member, but I'm also a city resident and a long time resident of downtown Seattle, where I got massively spoiled living in a walkable city. We purchased here in Lynnwood because of the impending light rail. We got spoiled, we could access light rail while we lived downtown. And we did not have the expectation at that time that the space between our home and the transit center would have the opportunities that we've talked about today. One of the things I've said repeatedly to my elected officials here in Lynnwood is we need to plant a flag. And I have felt for a long time that the absence of a civic center, specifically amenities like our library, our city hall, and a major city park, is telling developers that we just want them to do it for us. And I've heard some of that talked about today, and I was hoping maybe you could expand a little on what you see as the value of what I call planting the flag. Thanks.
I'll jump in on that a little bit. I think it is incredibly valuable. I think it's incredibly, the opportunity, somebody mentioned the billboard effect that you can have in the city center is profound. Somebody was just talking about high-rise development. I would plant a flag in a very tall building that takes advantage of your own zoning. I would do it on a big piece of dirt that moves out a retailer that you don't necessarily want to be long-term in your city center, like Dania. To name one, I mean, I don't work for you, so I can say this. I would move all the furniture off over by Alderwood Mall where they should all be clustered together and, let them be over there together. And move the thrift stores on 99 where they can all be together, and move the drive-through banks, out as much as you can. And I want to talk about this, but I'm just being blunt. Go for the biggest property you can get, assemble that whole Dania thing, work with Fong and the other property owners on there to parcel that thing off so you can get some money back from it by either working with them or parceling that up, but make it. I mean, Ramon Guy are showing you how to do it. You just get the biggest property you possibly can. And that way you can design something really significant that has an impact on the entire city center. That changes the whole thing. If you try to do it in a 1 acre or 2 acre parcel, you're gonna get just, kind of what you've drawn up, which will be a yawn. And it won't do what you're saying is really plant a flag. I will also say one thing that I think, just to be encouraging. You've worked really hard in an abstract environment trying to imagine what light rail will be like in the future. In 2012, you could say, yeah, Sound Transit 2 is voted in, it's coming, it's blah, blah, blah. People did not get it until they saw the trees start to come down along I-5. People did not get it until they saw those cranes side by side going up. Right now, you have an amazing opportunity to do bold strokes. And everyone in Lynnwood who I think is aware of these things going on will applaud you for it, because they realize this is a big, huge thing. This is a big wave. And using a big board and surfing hard is exactly the right step to make.
Yeah, so I'm the real estate developer here, and it's really a value question for y'all. You have to decide. It's your decision. It's your time. I'm going back to Chicago. You have to decide if that kind of a image is your image of a high, tall building, or if you wanted to be downtown Bellevue. That's for you to decide. I'm not going to make a value judgment, good or bad, on it. Your effect on the I-5 freeway as a billboard is important, and one of the things is the sites that we've talked about. You build your brand, but it's your brand, and we've said that to you. And I don't think that you should and build a consensus. As a real estate developer, I'm not here to say you need high rises. You need what you want, and that's all I wanted to say about it.
And I'm not a real estate developer, I'm a parks developer, so to just respond a little bit to planting that flag, the opportunity that you do have in front of you to create spaces that are important to people. So the conversations I've participated in, it's my understanding this community highly values parks and green space. And so I'm not saying anything new to this group, I'm certain of it, but you need to make sure the rest of the community understands that that's where your focus is. If you don't develop this in the right way to provide these quality services to your community, they're not going to stay. They have choices. And so you need to think beyond what's happening today 2024, and even just beyond that. We need to think about decades from now. The decisions that you're making today shape essentially for a lifetime, shape this community. So plant that flag, shape it to what you want it to be and what you think will not only attract people short term, but to keep those families here, those businesses here for generations to come.
Oh, Lynn from here.
Thank you all very much for spending 48 hours in our beautiful city. I've been inspired by your work today. I think all of us that work for the city, that care about our city, our community, our future, greatly appreciate the effort and time you took to interview our people, our community members, our staff, our elected officials. Challenge accepted. We've got a lot of work to do. I think we've made some great strides. We have a wonderful group of people here in our community that are taking time to be here today. You re-emphasized how the recipe for success will be for us. It will be with our community. I think our community really cares about what we're doing. It's very obvious. I think you saw that. Our city team cares about our city, what we want to do for our community. So you've inspired me. I know Sarah and I will probably be talking about this for the next 48 hours, probably even over the weekend. Because we will use this report. This will not be shelf art. We're going to make sure that this report is used and that it's circulated and that you've inspired me, and I pledge to all of my city staff, people here in the community, that we will work with you, do our very best to make Lynnwood something really good. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And with that, if you have any questions or comments after the presentation, I'm sure you can reach out to Sarah from the Parks Department, and she'll be in touch with ULI staff. So thank you again for attending and for your time during our visit. Thank you.
Panelists.